Hello, everybody. I'm Giulio. I'm here with Luiz and Emilia, and this is a knowledge element on Holochain. It will be an open discussion meant to understand the project better and to make the listeners and the people who are interested into the project to understand it via images and metaphors and applications of the project. We are also, the three of us, part of ReFi Barcelona, which is a new project based in Barcelona meant to be one of the nodes inside the ReFi DAO ecosystem. We are trying this experimental format, so let us know what you think about it. We also published a project card on Holochain, which is meant to be an introduction to the project. So if you don't know anything about it, we recommend you to take a look at it. And also we published another article, how Holochain can help grassroots movements against oppression. So those are good introductory materials to be complemented with this discussion. And also I want to thank Holochain for sponsoring this work, and the iteration one of the Commons Economy Roadmap, and also for sponsoring our first big event in Barcelona, ReFi Conference Barcelona 2024, which you can find the recordings and materials online. We will put all the links in the description. So Emilia, Luiz, please introduce yourselves.
Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Emilia. First of all, guardian of the earth, climate activist. I've been teaching and mentoring social innovation projects for almost 6 years. I'm also a brand strategist, so my deal here, my thing here is how to translate complex things into things that are more relatable. And as I don't come from a technical background, I think I'm this in-between situation about putting things in a simpler way.
Hello everyone. I'm Luiz Hernando, founder of ReFi Barcelona. We started the local node 1 year and some time ago. And I'm also a core steward at ReFi DAO. I've been working for the past 3 years in the Web3 ecosystem, more focused on ReFi. And basically overall what I'm kind of trying to do in the things that I like interact and work with in the ecosystem is basically building bridges between like all the tech and like tech stack and so on and like practical applications basically. That's one of the main intentions with the ReFi Barcelona local node. And also I think it's taking the connection. I'm interested in seeing and having like this session about Holochain now. I got briefly in contact with Holochain for the ReFi conference in April. Now curious to reconnect and understand a little bit better, building on top of like the kind of knowledge that I had and seeing also what's new on that, and seeing also trying to have like this lens of how to connect with like practical applications and so on.
The Commons Economy Roadmap is this open research and promotion protocol that we are trying to build to promote what we consider the most commons-oriented and successful projects of the space at the moment. And it's meant to grow with time, both in terms of feature projects and in terms of the entities stewarding the protocol. You can read more about it in the links we will provide. And now we can move to introduce Holochain. We will try to speak about Holochain through the lens of what we want to do here in Barcelona with the ReFi Barcelona node, and speak about the node maybe from the perspective of what Holochain could bring us in terms of affordances or perspectives, especially as Holochain is I would say a special project among the 20 of the roadmap, because it has a very long, deep history. And the people that founded it have been very involved into community currencies and monetary theory for decades. And since 5 or 6 years, they are building this very pioneering distributed protocol, which in part it exists and you can use it and it's running and there are some first applications, and in part is still not here. There is a lot of development and sense-making work and implementation work needed to make it real, let's say. But trying to explain it, starting from the basics, Holochain is an open source framework designed for creating applications that run on top of a distributed network. So instead of the current pre-blockchain model in which like there's a server and the apps run on a server, In this scenario, the applications can run on a distributed network of nodes, but it's different than blockchain as well, because it's not a single ledger, it's not a single network, but the nodes can connect to the nodes that they want according to their needs. And there can be multiple networks running autonomously, and they can connect when they want. It's a bit difficult to grasp. Again, please, if you're really struggling with understanding what I'm talking about, read the project card that we wrote, because it's full of examples. But to introduce a metaphor, the first of this talk today, and it's a metaphor that helped me a lot to understand the project. Basically, Holochain is like the cells in a body. The cells in a body, they don't share all the information between all of them at the same time, because it doesn't make sense. There's just some communications between certain areas in certain moments when it's needed. And so basically, Holochain is saying that we don't need to be all connected all the time, as in the blockchain, where you have a single ledger. We can build these protocols to build like a body, so like optimize the transferring of information only when it's needed. Also because being on a single ledger brings a certain set of problems and so on. So there is a lot of use cases that are emerging on Holochain, but I would say the most interesting or feasible ones are social media applications and communication applications, because for contexts that require more security, for example, for transaction, where it's very important that there is a consensus on the network, blockchain still is and will be more suitable for these things. For example, for social media, it's very interesting what it can be already be done with Holochain, because basically a community, either online or locally, can have its own social media running on their own network, and nobody else can see what's happening in the social media, and you can have your ecosystem of applications. And then you can plug this set of apps running in your local network with other tools in the blockchain space or other applications or whatever. So, Luiz and Emilia, what are your first comments on Holochain?
Actually, what you just said, for me, it's very useful for, I'm part of Extinction Rebellion Barcelona, and we have a lot of situations where we have sensitive information because, of course, if we are preparing an activist situation and we are doing something and we need this privacy, and we have, in Spain, we have spies, undercover police that got engaged in the group. So this is very dangerous for the association and all the activist groups. And we have very sensitive information. And also, for example, in Spain, some type of activism is related to terrorists. So activists are compared with terrorists. So having this special connection, this own app or our own channels and our own platforms to share our information, this could be really useful for all the activist groups that I've been involved. I think this could be a really good use case.
And yeah, from my side, as I was mentioning that with the ReFi conference, that was like the first touch point that I had with Holochain. I think it's quite interesting, in the positioning that it has, that it's not completely it is not a blockchain, it is something different, but at the same time, it does have a lot of the applications could be somehow similar. So I'd say for now, basically what I have to share is the curiosity of understanding what are the new possibilities that are enabled by these small kind of peculiarities of Holochain, and how that can be leveraged. I started seeing some practical applications of Holochain. I saw the example of a social network on Holochain. Also, there was the other example that is Neighbourhoods. That was really cool to see, because also it's it is always already kind of a way to show how exactly the architecture of Holochain can somehow be leveraged for this kind of local organizing, as Emilia was saying, and everything. And now it's quite easier to see when there are these applications built on top, with kind of these focuses and so on. So yeah, I'd say that, and also kind of briefly coming back to the point, like in comparison with blockchains and so on, we see that like in the last years there have been like an increase in like social networks in the blockchain, or like other kind of social network like infrastructures that communicate with the blockchain and so on. So yeah, again, I'm interested in exploring more and understanding like what are the caveats of Holochain and each one.
Thank you. Yeah, what I find really interesting and useful about Holochain and was the value that Holochain has contributed to our community so far, let's say, at all the events where it was sponsoring us in the Commons Hub since 2021, is that there is like, let's say, three main dimensions, which is like the technological dimension, the economics dimension, and the political dimension, which are all relevant, that explain why Holochain makes sense and is useful. And each of these three dimensions can lead into very interesting discussions, and also is related practically to issues of the how to use Holochain concretely. Do you want to comment on one of them, of these three? Because basically, on the technological level, we have this set of distributed technologies, which again is not like blockchain, is more like peer-to-peer technologies that were already existing, like torrenting that maybe you have used personally, and some cryptographic things. And there is some very interesting tokenomics at play that they are trying to experiment, and here is a mix of technology and economics, because they have a system of tokens which is meant to protect the system from speculators and to give the benefits of this speculation to the producers of the value, which is the hosting nodes of the network where the applications run on top. And then you have the political dimension, because of course Holochain doesn't want to be a company, but it wants to be an open, distributed global ecosystem of developers, users, citizens, institutions, groups, and so on. So do you want to comment on any of that?
I think you said on the second part, the second part was governance, economics
and politics.
Politics. It was this thing. Related to politics, I think this is a key aspect in developing tech. And what I've seen coming from a non-technical background, but a very like social and grassroots and political, more as a citizen, having different perspective on the governance of technology, different viewpoints and different backgrounds, I think this could change the way we make, perceive, and use technology. For what I've seen now in our ecosystem, everything is very technical, and there's a lot of technical people talking to technical people, resolving technical problems. And what we need, I think, more in our space is to have different perspectives and having maybe more citizens involved in the developing of technology, so we will have better applications and we can develop technology more based on real needs. And that's why I think having this discussion and thinking about what we can do with Holochain to help the technical and the builders to adapt it and create new ways of using this technology. I think this is very important.
Yes, and from my side, basically connecting to what I was mentioning before, I think by having this kind of different architecture, it may allow new models of organizing, like economically or like socially, politically, and so on. And then again, I'm curious how this new, like, what are going to be basically like the impacts of Holochain's architecture to the results that are going to be produced by these applications. So like by having an architecture like Holochain, what is the impact that would have in like social networking, for instance? Like how would like social network like using Holochain be, let's say, like fundamentally or structurally like different from more conventional social networks or not? So I'd say I'm curious, like in these points, to understand like what would be like in the practical applications, like maybe some intended like results of how new things would be possible, but also like some emergent results. And I'd say that I'm really looking forward to like in these fields, like to see how there is, what is the name? yeah, basically like engagement, like a application of Holochain can like be driven forwards and then have like multiple different like experiments, like multiple different applications that are running on top of Holochain, like multiple different like groups, local communities and so on, that are organizing somehow using it. Then I think like by having these experiments, we can then see like what are the results and so on, and see actually what are the new things that are allowed by these new things, and excited about that.
Thank you for sharing. It made me think that as we argued in the article we mentioned before, how Holochain can help grassroots movements against oppression, that there is this divide between global north and global south. And okay, this is a lot of different divides, and we could speak hours about it, but the main divide regarding Holochain, which I see as relevant, is that in the global north there is a lot more interest into privacy technologies and distributed tech, because let's say that all these new ecosystem of innovators, of the commons, of the regeneration, they are all nerds in the global north, mostly, at least like the tech people, okay? So in the global north you have the nerds, but there is not a real need for privacy because things usually works properly. And okay, we have big tech that are using all our data since we are born, and they amass an enormous amount of power. But practically in the daily life of the people, you don't have real problems that comes out of not having a distributed infrastructure. It's more like that the people that are ethically strong about privacy, they will use these things because they want them to exist, but it's not like that for most of the people is solving problems. While in the global south, it could actually be very helpful to have truly distributed infrastructures. And we argue that the first real use cases, or the first mass use cases from Holochain, could come from the global south, because again, like if you have a very weak infrastructure in terms of electricity, internet access, and so on, and you have an oppressive regimes, and you're a movement or a group of activists, and you truly need to be communicating in a P2P way. That's like the fact that the Holochain of UI is not so sexy as, like, I don't know, the big tech UI is an advantage, and it could be a question of life and death. And regarding to this, I was also thinking that I didn't ask you yet, but you are both from the global south. So Luiz is from Brazil and Emilia is from Argentina. In this perspective, and in the context of Barcelona, where again, there is not much this strong perceived need from people to have truly distributed applications, what could we do to sustain this global ecosystem? How Holochain could impact could be beneficial for our activities? And also, I now leave you introduce the plans for ReFi Barcelona node. Please take it from wherever you want.
Thanks for bringing this point. But at the same time, I would like to be kind of aware of this like framing that may not be like so helpful at all times, because like there's a lot of like so many like peculiarities and so on, and so many different applications that would make in some points like applications in the global south like more useful or relevant, but in some other ways like the opposite as well. Giving like a more concrete example, like so yes, there is a point like of the infrastructure points that Giulio was mentioning and so on, but I would say that a lot like in the global south, like in the developing world and so on, you have like solid infrastructures that can be used and so on, and to be honest, a lot of times they can be better than like global north infrastructures. So let's say, for instance, giving my example from Brazil, like the financial system, like financial applications and so on, I find them really, really easier to and like better to work with in Brazil than in Europe in general. So I'll just like be, how can I say, like cautious of having like these big kind of like divides, and at the same time like bringing a different example, like the privacy and like the centralization like aspect of Holochain can actually be quite like a special use case in the global north, I would say, bringing another example that is, for instance, like from torrenting, in which torrenting is like super hard, and like you have to be careful about doing it in the global north, let's say Europe, for instance, but in the global south, usually you would have no care at all about it. I never cared about torrenting in my life in Brazil. because we don't have these kind of like surveillance mechanisms that are so like entrenched as in the global north, I think then saying like, oh, that's good for the global south and global north, I think then like different applications and different like peculiarities of Holochain will be better for each like kind of situation. And I think like this privacy one in the global north is like a really relevant and could be a good potential.
Love that you're mentioning the privacy, and previous Giulio mentioned about this situation, global south, global north, and for example in Latin America, it's the most dangerous place in the world to be a climate activist. Climate activists actually disappear and nobody cares about them. I come from Jujuy, that is one place in the triangle of lithium. So most of the lithium for our future and the transition and the energy that we need to transition for the global north to decrease their carbon emissions, we would need this lithium. And the main problem with that is that this extractivist situation, we have huge, powerful, it's not even countries. They are companies that are bigger and more powerful than even countries in Latin America. So having this privacy and security network would be really helpful for these activist groups, especially in Latin America. And one of the things also that I think, speaking about this lithium triangle and global north and global south, is that if we need to make this transition using the resources from this global south that was the less responsible for the situation that we have right now, I think the global north have a debt on the global south and all the developing countries. So, and especially as our ecosystem, the ones that we are here in tech, we all use lithium and all these weird materials. So we have even a bigger debt with these countries. And I think this could be something that we can work on how to provide this safe infrastructure. And what Luiz was mentioning is about who cares, like what countries are looking to regulate or punish, or for example in the global north, you can have a fine by downloading something from torrent, and yes, I have a friend that got a 300 debt by downloading something. And in the global south, maybe you can get disappeared, like by sharing the information that was not need to share. And especially with this big company, especially in Jujuy, we have 6 countries that are also now exploiting this salar and these reservoirs of lithium. So yeah, long story short, I think our ecosystem and the global north, we have all the tools to support the developing of the infrastructure in the global south. And that's perfect because we still don't have enough digital infrastructure. So better to build it in a decentralized way.
Cool. So many possible discussion points here. I don't know if it was like superficial what I said, but yeah, there's a lot of complexity in the global north, global south issue, let's say. And also, yeah, you know it much better than me, Luiz, that in Brazil you have like things in Sao Paulo are completely different than outside of it, and also inside Sao Paulo, you have like completely different universes. Similarly in the global north, I mean, Europe is completely different from the US. Anyway, I think it's cool in the sense that we have a broad range of different technologies that have been developed, and it's not like, given that Holochain is not usable in all the contexts that we are living now, it doesn't make sense. And same for blockchain or whatever.
Speaking about ecosystems and global north and global south, I think if we compare everything with nature, as I'm a climate activist and we are in ReFi, so every ecosystem has a different kind of set of needs and different elements that are interacting in a different way. So what I think that Holochain can bring, can bring value is because we can create our own networks specifically for solving a specific problem in a specific place. So you don't need, for example, if you need to solve something small, like and you need to, I don't know, unscrub a shelf, you don't need a hammer and a huge machine to do it. So, and that brings a lot of energy consumption. So if we can create smaller networks and more use case applied, I think this could be something totally different and very valuable for our environment.
That's great. I totally agree. I think it's also the ethos of our ReFi Barcelona node, and we want to bring it as much as possible in the activities with tech people, with non-tech people. You remind me mentioning the energy expenditure of the blockchain in general, and also of Holochain, because for a lot of activists still today, when you speak them about crypto, the first thing that they will say you is like that it's very energy intensive, because, and no blame of them, but they are still stuck on 10 years ago conceptions of like the proof of work mechanism, which was and still is running Bitcoin, while all the other blockchains are now running on proof of stake, which is 99.95% less energy intensive. So it's like the best we can do, and it's not a problem anymore at all. Holochain wants to be even better in this sense. Like the Holochain nodes can run on any device, on a Raspberry Pi, on a laptop, or whatever. But still, I don't think this should be a very relevant factor, because blockchains are already very energy efficient, especially if compared with the traditional financial infrastructure with all the centralized banks and servers and ledgers and the security mechanisms to protect cash and so on.
So yeah, and then maybe before like talking about ReFi Barcelona, taking a step back and bringing up what is ReFi in itself. So ReFi is an abbreviation of regenerative finance, and then basically the idea with that is to develop new alternative financial systems that can be regenerative in a way, that can be quite broad and have a lot of different associated meanings and so on. The way that I would personally see like regeneration and what regenerative finance would be basically financial systems that have a positive impact in its environment. Again, that could also be quite like broad. And I would personally see that as either ecologically or social, basically. So I would usually like put this, any kind of regenerative impact in these two buckets. And then about the ReFi Barcelona local node, would you like to talk a little bit more, Emilia?
So for the ReFi Barcelona local node, we are lucky to be in one of the most political cities in Europe. And Barcelona, especially Catalunya, has been working on their own independence for decades. And they've been struggling with a lot of oppression from monarchies and central Spain. And so they have this feeling, vibe, organizations, cooperatives. There's a lot of like social and political movements here, and also a lot of people that is working with the regeneration of soil. And this is something that we want to connect, do with ReFi Barcelona, is connect all this grassroots organization and the political aspect of Barcelona, and connect it with the finance and the technology that Web3 can bring to the space. So for example, we are now in conversations with Fundación Emprius. They are a commons, and they are working on connecting all different projects that work on agriculture, and they want to support these people that is working on the land by giving them land and also sharing their tools. For example, there's a lot of tools that each landowner, instead of buying just one, they share, and also the information. For example, if something works here, they share the information, so this information can work for another worker of the earth. So for us, how we can, without getting into Web3 and into deep blockchain and tech aspects, we want to support them by helping them to provide infrastructure, for example, for governance, and also educational content, so they can learn how to use this technology, how they can apply it, and also provide them funding For example, now we want to connect them for the next round of Gitcoin, and we hope to get the funding from Web3 and put all this energy into the soil. So if we can be the connection between all this technology, the infrastructure, the funding, and all this with the people that is actually working, but they don't care about how to use this technology. They only care in how this technology and how this infrastructure can support them. So we are this connection between what I like to say, the sky and the earth.
Yes, exactly. And just adding a quick point on that, there can be like different things that would be like bridged or like mediated. So that can be, as Emilia was mentioning, like funds, that can be like knowledge. And yeah, overall, that's kind of the role that we want to be to have in ReFi Barcelona, to like create these new articulations that haven't been that weren't established before. And for instance, just bringing one that I think it's like relevant in the Holochain context, I'd say that a big one is also the drive to implement tech. So basically try to connect what are the actual needs of groups on the ground in terms of like tech requirements and so on, and then see what is the technology that can be useful for that. Or on the other way, like how technology that could be tested in some specific like use cases, how that can be like connected to the to groups who could benefit from it.
Yeah, and I add that we find ourselves in a very interesting moment, full of potential, and especially regarding regeneration. Now there is a lot of funding coming from all sides to regenerate the land and the local economy. Institutional funding, state funding, local funding, and then crypto, and then a lot of opportunities of funding and new technologies to be implemented, but connected to what we were mentioning before of the political values. In this complexity, in this chaos, it's even more important that we have clear and strong ethical values about what we do, because it's very, very likely that local contexts like Barcelona one, especially big city contexts where a lot of capital is flowing, it's very likely that a lot of bad actors like speculators or venture capitalist funds or green capitalists or whatever you want to call them enter into this context with funding, and everybody needs funding, but then the actions that are carried on are not really effective because, again, without this political dimension, you risk doing more harm than good. And also, Barcelona is a very politically active city historically. I also add that in terms of alternative blockchains or commons-oriented blockchains, it was really a pioneer. And also there is a long history of cooperativism, which is still very strong, and I would say is one of the most cooperative regions in Europe, if not in the world. So you want to comment on that?
Yes, for sure. I would say, like taking kind of like a personal approach on that. I would say like seeing the level of activity and like the engagement of like social movements and so on, and the development, as Giulio was mentioning of the cooperative movement, like seeing how many like so different use cases, how there are like so many cooperatives in Catalunya in general. And that was one of like the motivations to start the ReFi Barcelona local node, to basically exactly like connect this social economy and these cooperatives that are already like super aligned with the way, at least like my interpretation of regenerative finance, again, like like economic systems, financial systems that would have a positive impact in its environment. And these groups are groups that are having like in a lot of cases really, really good positive social impact and also ecological impact. There are a lot, for instance, of like agrarian or like land cooperatives and so on that are doing regenerative work on the ground. But coming back to the social aspect, I think that's a point that has been a little bit overlooked in the ReFi space. And I think, for instance, like exactly like in social regeneration, like taking like studying these social movements, studying like the emergency of cooperatives, can be super, super relevant for the development of Web3 and ReFi specifically. So yeah, connecting to that, I think it's interesting, like also like checking the analogy, like example like of bridges, mediation, and so on. I think it's really good to note that the idea is not for this bridge to be one way, but exactly for it to be bidirectional. So in one sense, we are looking into like how technology could support these local groups, like how, for instance, we could facilitate them by bringing additional funding and so on. But at the same time, we want to learn from them as well and like see how they have been like building this like amazing movement. If you take a look at the social and solidarity economy of Catalunya, that is basically you have like the network of the social economy that may be. And so I think it's like a really good example for us with the local nodes to also look, examine more and everything, and basically bring lessons and like understand what these can be helpful to the development of the ReFi and Web3 spaces and other things in general.
I think the Web3 space can learn a lot from co-ops, from cooperatives, because I like to think that they are like the previous type of organizations before DAOs. And I think we can have as many DAOs as we want, because it's very easy to create one. But the main problem is how to make people get involved, how to run the governance about these DAOs. And this is something that cooperatives has been doing for a really long time. And this is where we need to be, in my opinion, very humble and learn about how humans has been organizing between themselves for decades and centuries. So if we are able to connect that with the ability to make money, to put it into the regeneration of soil and the regeneration of society, this would be the actual win for our ecosystem. Especially, this is the vision that I have for ReFi Barcelona.
Coming back to Holochain now, and maybe going a step further in depth, I would like to speak about this tokenomics that they are trying to implement. And it's still in development, it's not operational, but I remember seeing the discussion happening in real life between Art Brock, the past CEO of Holochain, and Jeff Emmett, where they were discussing about how to design this Holochain token in a way that it's a token on financial markets. So there are speculators that are interested in speculating on the token, and that this can be leveraged by Holochain to get more funding. But usually it happens that in crypto especially, you have this decentralized structure where token holders decide, but still you have the problem that power concentrates in the hands of the token holders. So it's like, apparently it's like a co-op or a digital co-op, but then substantially it's a capitalist company, because like you have a minority of the token holders deciding everything. And so this is bad. But on the other side, you have the cooperativists or the radical leftists, that they are too tied to the worker cooperative model, where like every person counts one in the governance decision. And I think that now we have a huge design space among these two opposites. So instead of having either a one worker, one vote cooperatives, or a plutocracy of token holders where like only the rich decides, you can design systems where like you can have a mix of the two, and systems in which every stakeholder have governance power based on the value that is actually contributing. So not only monetary value or financial investment, but also like the producers of the value, the tech providers. And what Holochain is trying to do is that with this token, which is on the financial markets and gets financial speculation from external speculators, the stakeholders benefiting the most from this speculation is the producers of value and not the speculators. Meaning that, if you're an investor and you want to make money out of investing in Holochain, you can do that. And the system is designed in a way to take advantage of that. But it's also designed to be protected from too much speculation. And so in the backend of the protocol, you can dynamically adapt according to the conditions and what's happening in a certain moment, so that you can control the speculation when it's too much, or allow for more speculation when you need more liquidity in the system. And I'm very curious to see how is this going to be developed in the future. What do you think about this? Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I personally think it's really interesting to see that like now it's kind of like being easier to, let me see, you have all this like complex governance and like token models and so on, and we have like the more traditional ways in which like, organizations have been structured. So for instance, as Giulio was mentioning, like in cooperatives having like one person, one vote and so on. And I'd say really, really short, I think it'd be interesting like to meet halfway. So understand what have been like the experiments that have been done in like organizational design apart from the tech side of things. So for instance, in the cooperative movement, there are like different cooperative co-op models that are quite innovative and so on. And then on the token side of things, then you have like a huge like black hole of like things and so on. So I'm more interested in seeing like these two kind of approaches to like a, let's say, organizational design or things in general. Yeah, how these can meet basically.
Great, thanks for sharing. There is so much to discuss about, and we will surely do it in other knowledge elements or in our ReFi Barcelona activities. But now we will move to closure. I want to remind the listeners that a lot of things are going to be released soon in the Holochain ecosystem. A lot of Holochain apps are being developed and tested. And also, very cool, a phone is going to be released with Holochain inside. So Bolla phone, this German manufacturer, focused on privacy respecting phones, has partnered with Holochain. And so soon we could use a phone which relies on Holochain for some aspects of its functioning and storage. And that's very interesting. Luiz, Emilia, what do you want to tell the listeners about how an interested listener can be engaged in the ReFi Barcelona node?
So if you're around in Barcelona, get in touch with us. We have our website and a huge knowledge base, and you can also connect us on X. We are ReFi BCN, and our website is ReFiBCN.cat from Catalunya. And if you are in tech, you can just connect with us. If you are not technical, your support is also very crucial because we are building a network and we need a lot of perspectives for this. And I'll pass it to Luiz to wrap it up.
Cool, amazing. Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Giulio. And yeah, just connecting that also if you're not directly in Barcelona, even though that's a ReFi Barcelona local node, we're basically trying to connect projects all over Catalunya. Yeah, and eventually see like how to expand, how to facilitate the creation of new local nodes possibly and so on. So yeah, as Emilia was mentioning, if you're curious to know more about our like specific efforts with the ReFi Barcelona local node, feel free to check the knowledge base. There we also have included an ecosystem map that we did of the local ecosystem of Barcelona and Catalunya with value-aligned projects and so on. So interesting stuff. And then if you're not around in Catalunya, and you're still interested maybe like in ReFi, in the concept of local nodes and so on, you're also able to either taking a step back, there's basically an entire world community and network of local nodes that has been supported and like started by ReFi. If you're interested like about local nodes, check out if there's already a local node in your region. Maybe you can, maybe there's already one and that you can participate, contribute and so on. Or also if there isn't one in a region, there's also a possibility to open new local nodes. That was the case last year when I moved to Barcelona and I was interested in all of that and so on. There still wasn't a local node based here. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you, Luiz. Yeah, similarly, you can also get involved with Holochain in a bunch of different ways, not only technical, because there's a lot of community to build, to a lot of sense making to be done. And again, political discussions, cultural discussions. So stay tuned to Holochain, stay tuned to ReFi Barcelona, and don't forget to subscribe to the Commons Economy Roadmap newsletter, which is our main point of communication to the audience. And thank you for listening. And thank you, guys.
Thank you.